All right, today we are going to talk about China during the early modern period, or the pre-modern period, I'm sorry. And China during the post-classical period was ruled by the Yuan dynasty, which were the Mongols in China that had control of them. And the Mongols had replaced the scholar gentry and put Mongols in the bureaucracies. They were religiously tolerant, which offended the Neo-Confucianists, and they didn't really take care of peasants. So while the Yuan dynasty was this great time because trade was flourishing, they were religiously tolerant, the native Chinese did not like being ruled by these foreigners. And so there is a rebellion in which the native Chinese revolt in 1368, establishing the Ming dynasty, and the Ming keeps control or takes control away from the Mongols. Now, the Ming dynasty started using civil service exams again. They would choose their rulers, or choose their bureaucrats, their officials, by making them take a test which proved that they had merit to rule. They also had a re-emergence of the scholar gentry because of these exams, these educated and rich bureaucrats that were in charge of the country. The Ming dynasty also followed Neo-Confucianist beliefs, these ideas of Confucianism, this respect and virtue, the 5 relationships. But Neo-Confucianism was a little bit more strict, and it was a little bit more religious too. But Neo-Confucianism valued traditional culture, so much so that the Ming dynasty would often have public rituals, public Confucian rituals performed so that people would see the government using Confucianism. They would also wanted to isolate themselves. Okay, they built something called the Forbidden City, and here you can see this map of the Forbidden City, and it's completely surrounded by a moat where the emperors stayed in there so that they would not interact with the general population and keep true to the traditional Chinese culture. And they even did so much so as to have a group of eunuchs. Now, eunuchs are men that have had their genitals cut off so that they can't sleep with any of the royal guards. But these eunuchs kept charge over the Forbidden City and gained a lot of power and influence over the emperors at the time. But they were extremely advanced, but they started to isolate themselves to protect this culture, which is going to put them behind. Now, the way this isolation actually started was the opposite of that. They started to explore, just like the Europeans did. The Ming dynasty sponsored a guy named Zheng He. Zheng He was a eunuch from the palace that gained a lot of power, and then he got the emperor to pay him to go to all these different places and trade throughout the Indian Ocean. Here you can see his trade routes from China, throughout Indonesia, and throughout the Indian Ocean, all the way down to Africa. So he was exploring quite a significant territory. And he did this with a huge fleet of junks. And here you can see this junk here is much bigger than the ships that the Europeans were exploring in. Each ship had an army of its own. These ships were very intimidating. So when people saw China coming, these ships coming, they were impressed with the Ming dynasty. And they traded a lot with them, and this made the Ming dynasty very wealthy. But the problem was it was introducing new religious and cultural ideas to China, which the Neo-Confucianists did not like. They liked the wealth, but they didn't like the cultural diffusion that was happening. So Zheng He's voyages were stopped to stop cultural diffusion and to protect Neo-Confucian ideas. Now, this isolation started to cause poverty in China. They weren't trading. All these artisans that had spent their lives developing the skill to trade with other people now were not allowed to because China's isolated itself. And there's also another problem in China, that there's so much silver from Japan and Spain that it caused inflation, which is also going to increase the poverty. So the people started to become not very happy with the Ming dynasty's rule, and rebellions occur. Now, these rebellions get so bad that the Ming dynasty can't stop them. They were about to be taken over. So the Ming dynasty resorts to something that they wouldn't have done otherwise, and they pay Manchurians. Now, Manchurians are a group of people from from above China, north of China. and they paid the Manchurian warriors to come and help with the rebellion. So the Manchurians come down, China pays them, they put down the rebellion. But then the Manchurians see how weak the Ming Dynasty is, they turn against the Ming, and these Manchurians take over. So the Manchurians start the Qing Dynasty, also called the Manchu Dynasty sometimes. And it started by Kangxi Qianlong, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. He becomes the first Qing Emperor. Now, he's Manchurian, he's not Chinese, but he still uses Neo-Confucianism and civil service exams. Keeps a lot of the form of the Chinese government. But they don't employ Chinese people. They put Manchurians as the government officials, just like the Mongols did. And so Chinese are used for economic gains, but they're limited their ability to actually challenge the authority of the Qing Dynasty. Now, the Qing also expanded the borders of China. They conquered Taiwan, Mongolia, Tibet, and other parts of Central Asia. So here you can see the Ming Dynasty, and then here's where the Qing took over. Now, the Ming were not interested in exploring different lands. They were interested in conquering the neighboring places, but they weren't interested in going out and exploring like Xing He did, which again is part of their isolationism, which is going to hurt them, and eventually they're going to get behind. Now, the Qing Dynasty, as they're getting further and further behind, the Europeans actually come in. They're trading with China, especially for silk and rice and tea. But the Europeans start to do just like they do everywhere else. They start to conquer, especially the coastal areas. And so the Qing Dynasty says, whoa, we've got to stop this. And so they restrict trade to only one city, the port city of Canton. And here you can see a painting of the port city with all the European flags. And, they only allowed Europeans to be in this one place. Anywhere else, they fought and killed the Europeans. So the Qing Dynasty has to isolate itself too, which again is going to keep them from advancing. And will eventually allow Europeans to become more and more powerful, whereas China could have been the explorers and the conquerors of the world if they had used their junks and their advanced technology to do that. But they were more interested in protecting their traditional values. So that is the end of China.